I chose to read Java Man because I love coffee and tea and thought, hey, why not read the one about coffee and tea? But the author spoke about the history of coffee and tea and how caffeine became the drug of the modern world. And he even said on page 234 that caffeine is such a wonderful stimulant. Most substances can't cross the blood-brain barrier. Because it can cross the blood-brain barrier, it acts fast and gives us like a jolt of energy, which I no longer feel because my tolerance is so high, but that's how it's supposed to work. So he had many shades of arguments to discuss why caffeine has become the choice drug. But one of the ones that he talked about that I found most interesting was the one where he talked about the past use of alcohol and how the speed of our society has driven us to now drink caffeine continuously throughout the day instead of alcohol. He mentions on page 235 that up until the 18th century, most Westerners drank beer continuously throughout the day, including in the morning. In addition to that, on page 232, the author spoke to the history of Coca-Cola. So originally, Coca-Cola contained wine and cocaine, but now it's turned into what he calls caffeinated sugar water, which, I mean, that's basically what it is. And then also he talked about on page 236, he said, quote, one way to explain the Industrial Revolution is as the inevitable consequence of a world where people suddenly preferred being jittery to being drunk. In the modern world, there was no other way to keep up, end quote. I found it really interesting that he analyzed cultures through the lens of caffeine and the speed of society, and that in older cultures, I mean, they drank alcohol all throughout the day, but no longer can we afford to be drunk all day, and we need the extra jolt of energy to keep us awake. He also spoke a few times about how, lawyers and physicians and jobs that take rigorous training programs where it's just long periods of time of sleep deprivation, those wouldn't be possible without the use of caffeine. And so just basically to keep up, we have to drink a lot of caffeine in modern society, and I thought that was a really interesting lens to look through on the way culture has moved and the fact that the Industrial Revolution is really when this started. A couple of questions that I had for you guys was, do you believe that the Industrial Revolution was the driving force to switch from alcohol to caffeine? What stereotypes do we associate with coffee houses and coffee drinkers? He spoke a little bit of that. Could you make it through your work and your school day without a dose of caffeine? I definitely could not make it without caffeine. I have like 3 cups of coffee every day. And in our world, is our world so incredibly fast-paced that we have moved to toxic energy drinks to make up for the lack of sleep? I mean, I used to drink a lot of energy drinks to get me through the day because I just couldn't keep up without them. But something I thought that was super interesting about the fast-pacedness of our society and like our need for caffeine is now caffeine in adolescents and caffeine in like young kids and how much that they're consuming. And so I read an article from EBSCOhost called Electronic Device Use and Beverage-Related Sugar and Caffeine Intake in U.S. Adolescents. And they said, quote, consumption of added sugar and caffeine and risks of exceeding respective thresholds through energy drink and soda intake were higher amongst youth with greater daily use of TV, video games, talking on the phone, and social media use. So this article talked a lot about how the fact that teens and youth who use a lot of electronics and technology are the ones that are drinking more caffeine and more energy drinks and more soda, and they proposed that it was to keep up with the with social media and video games and all those kind of things. So I think that it's really interesting how caffeine is now affecting parts of our adolescence due to more changes in our society. Thank you.